First up is Shane, and overall, I would say this looks good. I think you've got the right idea. Um, the character has good shapes. It's a little lopsided here. There's some different angles, but we're only really going to build half of it and then mirror it anyway. So as long as one side's pretty straight, that doesn't matter so much. Um, and if I'm not mistaken, it looks like it's slightly tilted back, but that's okay. Um, then I would also say, just one thing to know is that the tutorials have been designed around doing sort of a separate pants and shirt. So if you wanted to kind of separate out the pants and shirt, you could do that. It might be helpful. I had mentioned about kind of getting the face to be more human-like, and I saw you submitted an additional drawing here. And yeah, I think that's helpful. Yeah, I mean to see that there's kind of a chin and some, a little bit of a sense of lips here, and a kind of a subtle nose. So another thing to think about with the eyes is even if the eye opening has this kind of oblong shape, the eyeball is still very likely going to be a sphere. So kind of, imagine that there's a very large sphere in there, and imagine that there's a skull underneath that would accommodate the two large spheres, and kind of, you know, plan for that. And you might want to do, I mean, I like these expressions, and I'm glad you did that. Oh, this one looks a little bit physically impossible for that to come down so low. But because I would think if there's sort of breathing slits that they would somehow be connected to tubes, and I think there would be kind of a ridge on the skull here that they couldn't go beyond. But I also like to show these sort of muscles in the neck, and especially, I mean, I think that's good to emphasize it on a character like this because with such a large skull, it's a very top-heavy character, meaning that in response, it would likely need you know pretty pretty big muscles in the neck to hold up that very large head relative to the size of the body. So I think that's good, and I think don't be shy about really kind of emphasizing the muscles that are used to kind of help support the head. Um, but yeah, overall, I think this is very good work. There's a few things to keep in mind. You might want to do just a nice close up, just straight on, head and side view of the head with your more kind of thoughtful, developed one. Uh, but yeah, I think this is very good work. Next up is Francis, and yeah, I think this is looking good. Might think about the proportions of the legs. I don't know, for some reason the knee is looking a little bit low to me. Something you could always play with a little bit later, but it's got some very good clear basic shapes. It's a very clean drawing. I think it's going to be easy to model from. I think the hands could use a little bit more attention and shape. I think you've kind of this transition with the wrist. I think maybe the palm is a bit short before it transitions to the finger, and you might want to just go a little bigger on the hands. You might take a look at some anatomy reference photos for that. That could be helpful. Another thing is to sort of give if you're going to have the arms out to the side. I mean, I'm demonstrating it where the arms are down at this angle, and either one's really okay. The idea of the arm being down at this angle is that um, that's kind of the middle shape of the arm versus being at the side, being out here. When you're raising your arms above here, it's really sort of the clavicle and the scapula that's lifting it up straight. And but anyways, the point of the story is that if the arms lifted up the sides, there's going to be a bit more of a shoulder shape here. So I would kind of build in the shoulder shape a bit more. As I mentioned with the last one, when I'm demonstrating the modeling, I'm showing it with a shirt and pants. So if you want to do a separate shirt and pants, it's a good idea. I think the head's got some good clear shapes. It seems to be symmetrical front and side from what I can tell. Um, yeah, a good kind of skull shape there. I think that, if it were human proportions, and I know this is not a human, but there would be more forehead. So this would go, I think, a bit higher. But again, you don't have to obey those rules necessarily. So yeah, I think this is a really a good functioning design. I think focus on maybe some more shoulder shape, maybe some more arm shape. For some reason, that arms look a bit short to me here, but they might be okay. Um, and yeah, I mean, if you wanted to do like maybe like a 3/4 just sketch of the head just to see what it might look at another angle, that could be helpful too. So this is really excellent. It's interesting, that it's got these exaggerated long legs, and it's interesting. I was just at a lecture yesterday which was talking about the anatomical differences between males and females, and one of the things about females is females have longer legs compared to their torso length than males do, and so it's interesting to see one with such exaggerated long legs. Um, One thing is that I'll typically do the palms facing down rather than facing forward. Um, I suppose I think it's going to be challenging to use the rigging thing we're going to use if you have the palms facing forward. It's certainly not impossible, but the typical standard is palms facing down. So I understand. I think this is a very useful drawing to have for your hands. So it's good to have drawn out the hands, and obviously the side of the hands don't give you much information about the shape of the hands. But I think for use for creating the model, to have the palms facing the ground is best. Um, yeah, and I think just really good design all around, very symmetrical. I feel like the legs could use a little bit more shape. There's something maybe a little bit more in the thigh muscle, and the way the knees kind of bulge out here. I think you could just give the knees a little bit more attention. Again, maybe get some anatomy reference to get just a little more shape to the thigh and knee, because you have this kind of very straight line here, and that looks and I think maybe getting a little more sense of some muscle and fat in the thigh area, and a little bit more definition to the knee, I think would help you out. Although I think you've got it from the side, there's a little bit more going on there. I think it was just more towards the front. That would be helpful. But yeah, it's looking good. The lips look pretty exaggerated there. I think they're even. I mean, I understand it's supposed to be sort of the kind of full lip look, but that looks quite big from that point of view. I mean, even compared to the front. I mean, if I'm just looking at the height, it might be good to look at these side by side and just kind of do a little measurement to see if I'm right about that. But just eyeballing it, to me, it looks like maybe you went a little bit too exaggerated, at least at that top lip there. Um, but anyways, yeah, maybe the way to do it is just put the drawing side by side, and then have a horizontal line, or use the guides in Photoshop and just measure that out to see. But I mean, really, this is excellent work. It looks quite professional, so great job on that. Next up is Lindsay. So regarding the wooden dummy character, I think the idea is a good idea. The drawings are perfectly good. I just don't think it's the best choice for what we're trying to learn and do in this class. Um, I think a big part of this class is the modeling of the character, and this really is mostly spheres and pretty simple shapes. And it's not really giving you the opportunity to get into some more kind of detailed organic modeling. Also, there's no face for facial expressions, and that would be a missed opportunity as well. So, um, I you know I think that I probably could have put more sort of direction and restrictions in the assignment to sort of, to prevent you from going down this path. But I would really encourage you to do a kind of a more of a humanoid character that has like a shirt and pants, hands and feet, eyes, nose, lips, the sort of normal human characteristics rather than this wooden dummy. So it's like I said, it's not a bad idea. It's not a bad execution. I just don't think it's gonna be the best choice for learning what I'm hoping for you to learn in this class through the series of stuff that we're going to go through. So I'd encourage you to kind of go back to the drawing board and again do a more humanoid character with all the human characteristics, so you can apply what's learned. Next is Mary. I notice this is labeled front side, but we only have the front, so um, I'm wondering about getting the side view as well. The other thing is you're going to really want to get the character into the T-pose. The arms kind of out to the side, the legs parallel, feet facing forward. It looks like you have the stitching on the boots on the side, and I suppose that's possible, but I would sort of expect that to go down the center. It kind of looks like a Lara Croft knockoff to me, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's also like, well, then just get an image of Lara Croft, and use that instead, as reference rather than kind of knocking it off. And also, it's just not, some of the areas lack detail, like, especially because there's some perspective on the arms. You don't have a sense of the shape of the shoulder. Where's the elbow? Where's the wrist? You really have to have the arms out to the side. I like to have them kind of at a downward angle like that. And I did recommend staying away from things like ponytails as well, so I would recommend staying away from that. And the face, as it's drawn here, really isn't giving you enough information to work with. That's not enough information to help you create your model. There's not enough detail in the drawing, and it's too small, and it's a little just kind of rough. So I think you definitely need to do another pass in this. You need to make sure it's in the T pose, and you need to make sure it's you have both the front and the side view, and just get into more detail. And then as far, again, it just looks like Lara Croft to me, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I also think, the other thing is just if it's just going to be a human female, which again is fine. There's loads of human female photo reference. Like I would just use a photo at that point. In fact, there's this website 3D.sk that has like loads of human reference, thousands upon thousands of images, and you can use that as or even just trace over it to kind of stylize it and clean it up a little bit, is a fair approach. So yeah, I think this needs more work. It needs to be T-pose, and it needs to be the front and side view. Um, Next up is Amber. So for this, I really like that you're kind of working with some interesting basic shapes, and I like that the character has some backstory, and it's got sort of cuteness to it. So all those things are good. I'm a little concerned about the extremeness of the how short and stubby the legs are. I just think it's going to be hard to animate it doing very much with such short legs that are so wide at the top. There's just so little to work with there to get the thing to move. It's almost like a penguin. So what I would encourage, I think you can keep the kind of short, cute sort of look, but still go with at least somewhat longer legs that have some kind of knee definition in there so that you can bend the knee. Because right now there's just no sense of real hip or knee or ankle. It's just this one sort of triangular shape, that's forming the whole leg. So, oh yeah, I mean, let's get some longer legs on him or her. is it him? I'm not sure. It doesn't matter. And then the face, I think, needs a little bit more develop. I don't know what's going on with the shape of the eyes here. They look kind of strange. And I get this idea that you're trying to do chubby cheeks, but it's looking kind of odd from the front view. And I think you could work on the shape of the nose. So I would get some I would spend some time on the face as well. Also, maybe give it some more shoulders there, and yeah, and then one thing to go for the cuteness factor. You know, a lot of what we associate cuteness with is basically childlike, and what you have here is that you have something with childlike proportions. It's like the sort of like the body of a toddler in that it's about, or a baby even, it's about 3 heads tall. So, and so that's what's helping with the cuteness. But I think this got a little wide, the skull here from side to side maybe, and the cheek needs work. So, I think maybe go and get reference of toddlers and use some of that and kind of base some of your design on that and just work on those facial features a little bit more to get that more defined, because I think you're going to struggle when you start trying to sculpt a face to use this as reference, because it's not a design that I think really explains what's going to be happening in 3 dimensions. So more work on the face, lengthen the legs, and I think you'll be happier when you go to model and then animate the character. So next up is Ekaterina. And conceptually, I think this is very cool. I think it's a really good just concept. I think it'd be a interesting character to see animated. I think from just the point of view of the class and the process and being able to animate it and create facial features, I'd rather you go for something that was more human-like with shirt, pants, shoes, nose, eyes, mouth, kind of just a full sort of normal human detail. And I also think that this is getting really just almost too, I guess, simple. So I think conceptually wise could be very cool. For the purposes of what we want to learn in this class, it's going to be tough, and I think you could there's a potential to do something that evokes the idea of the paperman while still moving the design in the direction of a kind of a more normally fleshed out human. And so I kind of would leave it to some of your creativity to do that, but I would like to see something that's a little more sort of dimensional, a little less flat, and has all the features that you would want to be able to kind of fully build and then rig and then animate the character. So I don't have all the solutions here, but I think something that has a little bit more shape to it, something that is a bit more 3D, like has the depth and the thickness to it and the more human-like body shape. I think it's going to work better for this class. And if you can do that while still evoking the idea of Paperman, great. If not, maybe just try a different design. Next is Ariana, and it's good that you're drawing from various inspiration. Um, for the design, the drawing is very flat, and the proportions are a little off, and some of the anatomy isn't really great. So I'm thinking that you might do better with photo reference. So you might want to start by going to a website like 3d.sk and looking up some, because it is pretty much a straight up human female body. Um, you don't really have to draw this from scratch, and I wouldn't worry too much about it at this point about little kind of patterning of designs, and it's fine to explore that. I think that's great, but the main purpose of this drawing is to be able to model the character, and so you really just you need the shapes and the forms, and don't worry about the the pattern or the texture or those kinds of things at this point. But there's just weird stuff going on with the different shapes and the arms, and you're kind of losing the hand here, and the elbow's in a weird place. There's not really a shoulder there, and this part's kind of strangely separate from there. So I just think that you might be better off with some photo reference, and you can even start that and sort of kind of do a draw or trace it. The face has got just a lot of issues here. It's not really, there's not much of a chin. There's weird proportions problems. So these drawings as they stand are not going to work well for modeling the character. So I think, again, going back to photo reference and either just straight up using photo reference, which I'm really fine with because I just want you to have the best thing to move forward with, or or kind of just using it to help you with your drawing by kind of tracing over it. I think it's going to result in a much better and more useful thing, because ultimately what this drawing is for is to be able to model your character, and right now you don't have the forms or shapes that are going to result in a well-formed character at the end. Next up is Elena, and I think this is it's pretty funny. I just laughed when I first looked at it. It's just sort of the goofiness of it, and I think it's got a number of good things going on. I think the face has a lot of character to it, and it's sort of a good cartoony look. I think for the body, you need to put it in the T pose, and you might want to just use some, photo reference of a man. I mean, I would tend to the class is designed. The demonstrations I do are around modeling a clothed character. So there's modeling the pants and modeling the shirt and all that stuff, and you could probably apply that to the human body. But I think, it'll be easier to do something clothed, and then you would have to make some decisions pretty quickly, as are you actually going to model, if it's going to be nude, are you going to model the genitalia, or is it going to be like a Ken doll? And either way, it's just a little weird and distracting, which is okay. I don't really have a problem with that, but it's a decision that you'll have to make, one way or the other. And so I would encourage you to do a clothed version of the character, just partly because I think it'll go better for the course because of how and what I'll be demonstrating as we go down the line, which is to say I'll show modeling a shirt and modeling pants and modeling shoes, and then hands and a head, neck, and all that kind of stuff. So I would tend to go with this body shape, go with that head and face design, but then put clothes on him would be my recommendation. And yeah, and then just make sure things are symmetrical front and side, kind of do the horizontal lines and make sure the nose is the same height front and side and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think it's a fun character design. And I'm not opposed with you doing the naked character. I think things would go better if you did a clothed one. Also, make sure that your design is in T pose. Both legs should be facing forward, feet facing front, arms out to the side. Next is Joanna, and the fish movement. There's some very cool reference here. I like the sort of fin design on the head. I think maybe you've overdone that motif a little bit, because you've got it on the head and on the front and on the back and on the bottom of the arms, and it's maybe and on the calves. It's happening in so many different places that it's maybe a bit much. So I might limit it to fewer. I think I would lose it off the front. I would lose it off the kind of butt area. You could probably have some on the back and the head, but I guess what I'm worried about, for example, is as she's moving around the arms around, how are you dealing with these when the arm bends? how do those move? Do they intersect with the arm? Are they constantly intersecting with other surfaces? I think if it's on the head, it sort of works like a mohawk, and it can kind of stay out of the way. And on the back, I think it can kind of stay out of the way. But the front and the arms and the butt and the calves, I think it's too much. The other thing is that it just needs more form and shape and kind of sense of anatomy. And right now, it's very strangely thin here at the bottom of the leg and sort of doesn't look like she could stand. And there's not really a separation between the butt and the thigh. It sort of looks like one big shape, and it gets really narrow at the waist. And then it's just missing a lot of anatomy. So this is another one where I would say the using human photo reference would be the thing to do, because if you're really just going for a mostly anatomically correct female body, then why not just get photos of an anatomically correct female body and use that either as just straight up model from that, and I've mentioned this before, there's the website 3D.sk that has loads of that stuff, or um, to kind of sort of trace over and then kind of tweak your design to. The other thing is these feet look very unresolved. Are those just kind of are those shoes? Are those kind of things covering the feet? They're also very small for her height. I assume it's a female. It looks sort of female. If I'm wrong about that, apologies. But then the face also, it just leaves a lot of questions to me. I mean, there's very large ears, which is fine and an interesting design choice. And but is there a nose? Is there not a nose? And I don't really get what's going on with the lips here. Do you say anything about that? So I would tend to lean it towards more humanoid features on the face, and not try to be too fish-like, because I think it's just hard enough doing even a normal human face, and to do that and to balance it with the fish, and I think it's just going to be difficult to achieve that. So as it is, I think it needs some work. The other thing is these lines. It's like the whole point of the lines is to have perfectly straight lines so that you can make sure that like the ankles are at the same height and the knees are the same height. But these are just kind of sort of all weird angles and all over the place. So really, use a ruler and or what or anything a straight edge and make sure your lines are horizontal, because the purpose of the lines is to make sure things match up. I mean, here you've got these ankles, and this angle's all the way up here, and then it doesn't match up and stuff's going off the page. So I think it needs a little bit more time and effort, a little bit neater work, and lose some of these extra accessories and use some photo reference and get it to be more humanoid. So yeah, definitely do another pass at this, and let's see where you can get to. Next up is Natalie, and there's some cool reference stuff in here. Yeah, I mean, the glasses choice is interesting. I think the eyes have a lot of expression to them, so you're really limiting yourself by hiding the eyes. I think there's some work you need to do with the anatomy and the symmetry, and the hand that should be palms facing down, but these hands don't really give you much information to work with. So this is another one, like I've been saying with a few of them. If you're going to go for a mostly realistic human woman, just use photo reference from a human woman. This is not help. This arm is clearly much longer than the other. There's not a clear sense of elbow shape and forearm shape. Again, like one leg is much longer than the other. So there's just a lot of kind of just fundamental symmetry and anatomy issues that are going to make this not a good set of drawings to work from to create your model. So this one's looking a little cleaner, so that's good. But again, getting some, a little bit more of a sense of the knee in there, and where is the hip shape and the butt versus the thigh, and just some of those basic shapes in there I think could use some work. Also, when I look at this face and the length of it and the proportions of the distance of the eye to the top and here it looks to me different from the proportions of this one, and I think that you're lacking detail in the face that you'll want once you start modeling. So yeah, consider going to some photo reference and do another pass at this. Um, this is Yao Nan, and I mean it's a cute character. It's you've definitely made it symmetrical. I think that it could use some more work and shape. I think that it's a very 2D design, meaning that, for example, these little lines for eyes. The question I would begin to ask is, what does that mean when we start modeling in 3D? What are those little cylinders? Can it blink? Can it look in different directions? If so, how does it look in different directions? It's not the kind of eye design that I would think would translate well into 3D. Also, the body could use more shape. Right now it's a bit of a, it's almost a kind of a cube shape. Maybe try to do more of a like a pear shape thing going on for the body, and just get some more. And again, the legs are very cylindrical, and think about the legs. Think about where the knee is and the ankle is. It looks like you've anthropomorphized the legs, which is probably the right thing to do if it's a standing walking character. Um, so, but then if it's anthropomorphized legs, then it should have somewhat of a butt. It should have a thigh muscle. It should have a knee. It should have a calf. It should have an ankle. They don't have to be super defined, but they should at least be indicated. When you model the tail, you'll model it straight, and then you can put controls to bend it. The other thing is the mouth. This is a very sort of iconic drawing of a cat mouth. It's not necessarily defining, how does that mouth open and close? Can it have facial expressions? Can it smile? It's so I think that the face needs to be reworked. I think there's some decisions on how you balance the design between, being more cat-like and more anthropomorphized. And it's not that you can't have a cartoony look, but because we're modeling it in 3D, it needs to be a design that lends itself to three-dimensional shapes, and these designs are very two-dimensional. So also the hands and paws, they're kind of sort of indicated, but are there fingers? Are they articulated? How long are the fingers? You should do some additional drawings of how you're balancing a paw versus a hand. This being a sort of anthropomorphized cat. It generally looks a little sort of top heavy in the design, where it sort of looks like it will kind of, in a way, sort of fall forward or something, because it's sort of the thickness here, but without much mass, on the bottom there. So it might be something to play with a little bit. So, cat person, fun, cute idea. But as far as the design that's going to work well for modeling, I think you're going to find this challenging to get something that just works well for you. Also, it's difficult when there's no neck, and I tend to recommend having a neck. I also recommend having shoulder shape. Next is Candace, and let's take a look. Yeah, some really good drawings here. And clearly, a lot of attention paid to anatomy, and sort of many of the issues I've described in a lot of the other models are resolved here, meaning that you're seeing the anatomy, and there's a sense that, the forms and shapes of the body are clearly there. And you've got the T-pose here. I think this is looking a little bit odd. The feet, though, should be kind of flat on the ground and facing forward. And it's a little asymmetrical, which isn't so bad because we're only going to model, one half and mirror it anyway. I actually think that some of the facial stuff is a little bit more fleshed out on these drawings, though you'd want the arms, palms facing down, arm out to side. I've been doing like this sort of more 45-degree angle arm, but but you certainly don't want it this far to the side, for this close to the side when you model it. And let's take a look at these other studies. So yeah, these are all good kind of studies for character shape and kind of pose and design, so that's good. I think this sort of patterned thing going on is interesting, but as I've mentioned in other critiques, what I'll be teaching is modeling the pants, modeling the shirt, uh, head, hands. So it might be not that you can't then apply that to the same sort of principles to the human body, which is essentially nude. I think that it would be more difficult. So you might want to consider doing a clothed version of this character instead. But it is, it's a good design. It's basically, an anatomically, accurate female design. So, certainly that should fundamentally work well for something you model and animate. But um, like I said, the class leans towards a sort of simplified cartoony character that's wearing clothes. So you might want to try a clothed version of her. I am a little concerned about, and this is a little premature for this anyways to decide, but the when you get into really contrasty patterns like this, you run the risk of distracting the viewer from the pose, and really animation is so much about the pose of the character. So think about characters and see if you can find a character that has done something in this vein successfully. Um, because I think that very contrasty, very, uh, you know, well, I guess just really contrasty patterns like that, I think, yeah, basically they'll distract from the poses. So I think it's a cool idea and a good design, but I'm not convinced it'll work well for you once you're trying to, animate and express with the character. Um, yeah, those are my thoughts, but excellent drawings. Next up is Vincent, and I like the various inspirational images you've got going. Um, it's clearly, matching front and side. I think that really this could work for the most part pretty well. I think that to some extent, some of the design is a little bit lends itself towards like 2D drawn design. I think you need to make some decisions about the hands. You've sort of skipped over that, and it's very sketchy looking there. I like that there's sort of a general kind of line and form to the body. That said, I think there should be more definition at the knee to kind of define, where it bends, and to give it a chance to kind of bend and crease nicely. I think that I know you're going for sort of an angular look, but I still think that there should be an indication of a wrist, an indication of a shoulder, an indication of an elbow in there. Because a lot of what's appealing and what's working well for your drawing as a 2D drawing may be challenging to translate into 3D, and that would go for the mouth as well. I think it might be good to do a little bit more study on, how the lips are formed and shaped in this drawing. But overall, it's an appealing look. I think you're on the right track. I think you could do more refined stuff. I think you should definitely do some hand studies and some detail hand drawings to see what his hands are going to look like. I think you can keep some of your angular look and your kind of clean sort of geometric lines, but while still adding some of the details that I mentioned. Next one is Sharon. Yeah, it's got a lot of good stuff going on. It's looking pretty symmetrical. I think that the legs should be parallel with the feet flat on the ground and facing forward. You've got some kind of decent anatomical shapes going on. There's clear definition of the knee, calf, thigh, and various other areas. I think we lost a little bit of that arm. I think you could go a little bit more on the shoulders. The arms, when they're up, have a little bit more definition and kind of bulge to the shoulder. I think you've kind of, again, sort of avoided the hands a bit, and I think you'll want to do some studies on some sketches and drawing out hands. And It looks like to me that it's a woman wearing a wolf mask, if that's correct, which is fine, I suppose, but I guess with working eyebrows on the outside of the mask. I'm saying that I think largely because of this line here separating the top of the face from the bottom, it looks like she sort of slipped a mask over her head. Um, and again, which is an interesting look, but I think you might want to go a little bit bigger on the mouth. Again, that might work well for a sketch, but for an actual functioning mouth that opens and closes, it's looking kind of tiny. Maybe a little bit more definition on the nose. Make sure these match, side to side. Put them together in Photoshop and draw some horizontal lines, or use guides to kind of make sure that they match. And again, some good stuff going on here. Some good, decent anatomy happening. Uh, yeah, I think you've lost a little bit the foot and ankle here, and it looks like maybe you're trying to play with the um, having a wolf or fox-like foot, and really the answer to that is if it's a bipedal kind of character that walks like a human, the cat or dog like leg, I think, just doesn't work well, because just of the nature of supporting the weight of an upright walking creature, doesn't lend itself to a cat or dog type leg. And I think the design always struggles when people try to do that. It's hard to sort of believe. So everything else is so human body that if that's what you're doing that, no, certainly, having, kind of a paw-like toes and claws, there's no problem with that. But I just mean the way the kind of the ball and the heel and the ankle are formed and touching the ground, I would go with sort of a full human design rather than trying to compromise, if that is in fact what you were trying to do there. But overall, it's a good drawing, and I think, getting the leg parallel, feet facing forward, feet flat on the ground, defining the hands and a few of the other areas, and it could be a workable character. I tend to want to stay away from tails. I think you've got plenty to worry about and do without having to deal with something like a tail also. So, I would say lose it, and if you're dying to have a tail, you could always add it later. Next up is summer, and yeah, I mean, I think you've got like a start and an idea, but this is definitely insufficient for what we need for being able to model a character. So the idea of going for like a cat-like humanoid isn't necessarily problematic, but you need to draw the full character with the arms and legs, get a little cleaner with your work and a little bit more detail and all that kind of stuff. So it really looks like just a start of a concept of an idea. And again, the eyes should be able to be functional, the mouth should be able to move and form expressions. So when you try to find that balance between human and cat, you know lean towards the human features. Um, Before I move on, I want to show the design that I will be demonstrating with for the class. So here's the design I'm using to demonstrate for the class. It's a fairly um, standard kind of human shape. It's somewhat cartoony though. The proportions aren't really human. Um, Uh, it is everything is the same front and side. It's definitely got some design sort of challenges to it, but there's kind of a hand study to kind of define the hand, and it's a clean drawing with clean outlines to really help form the shapes. It gives, sorry, that's something else, but it gives you a sense of what they might look like in 3 dimensions. It's kind of simple. And what I'm going to say is that and so all the tutorials are going to go through modeling this character. So if you decide that you just want to follow the tutorials, you'll have the option of just using this. But you'll notice that, again, legs parallel facing forward, arms diagonally out to the side, palms facing down. You can have them straight to the side, or you can have them diagonal down. The idea of being diagonally down is that most of the arms movement is between here and at the side, which is, we do occasionally raise our hands above our head, and there's certainly actions where the character will do that, but the idea is the majority of the range is from out to the side. The majority of the time it's moving between that range, and so this shape is sort of the compromise between what it would look like out to the side and what it would look like down by the sides. It is symmetrical side to side. There's at least some indication of knee. There's some indication of the butt. So I just wanted you to see that, and so you have a sense. Again, it's pants and shirt and shoes, and so that's what I'm going to be demonstrating, teaching. So, and that's why I keep saying, for a lot of your designs, that you might want to have shirt and shoes and pants and all that kind of stuff, so that because all the instructions sort of built around that. So probably I should have that included in that assignment description at the beginning, so it could save us some steps, and I probably will do that in the future. But we do have plenty of time to continue working on a character design. That doesn't happen for several more weeks, so that's not a problem to continue refining and honing your design. And the actual 3D model, in my opinion, can only be as good as the design. So I think it's worth your while to spend some time on your design to get it to something you're happy with and really want to model. And so yeah, that's a little bit of background on that.